There's a lot going on in this movie.
It was like I was watching it for the first time.
I like this movie.
It has a special place in my heart.
Very close to my heart.
This was a good one.
I want to like this movie.
What? Seriously?
I loved it.
Very flat, kind of boring.
This movie blows me away. This movie turns me on.
Terrible. It is terrible. All these keys everywhere. Influences, baby.
Huge fan.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Hello and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast and corresponding YouTube channel where two guys sit around. We talk about movies, horror, and science fiction, in particular, those particular genres, key influences on the particular movie of the week, so to speak, and then things that that movie might have influenced going forward. If you're new to us, we are so glad that you found us. We'd love to find out how you found us. Why don't you tell us down below in the notes or in the comments down below, let us know. And also you could subscribe and find out more about us and see more of the episodes that we've done in the past. We've been doing it for a while. If you're returning to us, we're so glad you are. You already know all of this stuff, and you've probably fast forwarded through this so you can get to the episode. But anyway, my name is David. I'm here with my good friend Tim. Tim, we usually start with what's happening in genre week. What have you been doing? Anything scare you this week?
What are you looking at?
I'm looking around.
I thought you might have been freaking out because I got up and left for a brief second while you were talking.
It was interesting that you did that, yes.
Yeah, I had a fan running and I thought, I better turn that off. That might be on the audio if I don't.
Well, could be.
But enough of that. What have I been doing in my genre week? Well, I decided to hit Shudder again because I've been on a little bit of a roll there. And I caught a movie called In a Violent Nature.
Okay.
This came out a while back, and I didn't get around to watching it at first because I saw where it was awarded some stuff on the Chainsaw Awards, the Fango Awards, for like best kills, and it was like really gory, and I was like, this is going to be just a gore fest movie. I'm not going to like it. And I was surprised. I was very surprised, yes. It's a Canadian film. And like I said, I thought it was going to be too much. Well, basically, it's told from the killer's point of view, or at least a lot of it's seen from the killer's point of view. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was going to be annoying, like a found footage movie, and it's not. It's old school, it's familiar, yet it's fresh and new at the same time. I thought it was going to be just gore for gore's sake, and sometimes some of the kills don't have any gore at all, which really surprised me. They're playing with you a little bit. It was written and directed by a guy named Chris Nash. This is his first feature. He's only done shorts and videos.
Okay.
The cast is great. I don't really know any of them since it's Canadian. The synopsis is when a group of teens takes a locket from a collapsed fire tower in the woods, they unwittingly resurrect the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by her horrific 60-year-old crime. The undead killer soon embarks on a bloody rampage to retrieve the stolen locket, methodically slaughtering anyone who gets in the way. Yeah.
It sounds like one of those 80s horror films.
It's exactly what it is. It reminded me of Friday the 13th, only it was a little bit better of a story. And they're making a sequel. I hate the title, though, In a Violent Nature. Maybe that's another reason I didn't watch it, was because of the title.
Well, I don't know. It sounds like indie avant-garde. This will be the Oscar-winning short, In a Violent Nature.
It gets 78 on Rotten Tomatoes with 180 reviews. I would bump it up to a solid 80. As I said, there's a sequel coming. I'm ready for it. I love the backstory that this killer is disfigured and dead and rotting and of a supernatural origin, which is very Jason, because when you see Jason in movies after the second one going forward, he is too. It's very reminiscent of Friday the 13th. It's like the Friday the 13th for a new generation, so to speak.
Okay.
And it's definitely one of those stories you would hear around a campfire, and there's a scene where there's a campfire and they're telling the story.
Okay.
So, but anyway, that's what I did in my genre week. I watched In a Violent Nature.
In a Violent Nature. I went back and was looking at the list and saying, I've got to catch up on something. I want to watch something and everything else, and found that I had not ever watched Prey, the prequel to Predator.
It's Predator. I've seen it.
Yeah. Oh, you saw it? Did you like it?
I did. It's been a while since I saw it, and for some reason I never mentioned it on a genre week, but I did watch it probably when I was recuperating last summer from surgery. Yeah.
Okay, I watched it finally. It's been on my list forever, just like about 700 other things. And I had actually liked Predators, the one where all of the convicts go to hunt all of the predators. They end up on the predator planet. But I vaguely remember it. I thought it had some good actors and some good scenes, but not really good. I'm very picky about my Predator because I really like the original so much. And I really liked this one. I thought it was directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who did 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Right.
And we liked that as well. But I thought the cast was really strong. To do a film of this nature without dialogue was pretty risky. But a lot of it is in Comanche, I found out. I didn't even know what tribe it was when I was watching it. I had to look it up in the notes. But yeah.
Well, it makes sense in a way because we never do hear what the predator has to say other than a bunch of clicking. So.
Right. And if you watch the original, again, it's Stallone and the Predator mostly for a good 40 minutes without dialogue.
It's Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Schwarzenegger. Sorry, not Stallone.
Same
Schwarzenegger.
thing.
But yeah.
I'm not a fan.
I highly recommend it for the suspense, for the way he crafted stuff, even the non-predator stuff when she's trying to learn, when she's being attacked by a bear and all of that. Just the way he shot it, the way he did it, really, really strong film. And
I liked all the stuff with her and the boys in the tribe and all, and how they didn't really respect her, and she was basically out there kicking ass to prove herself. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one of those, it came out in 22, so it falls into that post-Me Too movement when lots of female heroines and lots of female heroine stories are being developed. But this one doesn't feel forced or agendized or anything. It feels, it's a coming of age of a young warrior. She just happens to be female. And she just happens to be better than the boys. So I liked it. I thought it was very well done and scary and creepy in places. So,
Well, speaking of scary and creepy and violent, we are in Horrorland this week, and we are we're actually only going back a few years to 2021. However, it feels like 1978, I believe, was the year this is set in. We're going to watch a little movie, or talk about a little movie called The Black Phone. A quick synopsis is you've got basically a small town in the late 70s is being terrorized by this killer, or at least he's thought to be a killer. He's an abductor of children called the Grabber. That's what they've nicknamed this person. And it's about a young boy named Finney and his sister Gwen, who are being raised by an alcoholic and abusive father named Terrence. And apparently their mother committed suicide because she had prophetic dreams that unnerved her as well as her husband. And basically you get to see Finney and Gwen at school, and Finney's bullied by other kids, but he has befriended another kid that needed help with his homework that is a stronger fighter. and this friend helps Finney out in situations where others are. But this guy that is his friend that helps him ends up being one of the kids that gets abducted by the grabber. And it actually starts off with a baseball game, and one of the baseball players on the opposite team of Finney is someone else that gets abducted. So we see a few of these abductions before Finney gets abducted, and then that is where the story unfolds. Basically, he is taken by this really creepy guy in a stovepipe hat to a basement. He is confined down there, and it's nasty. He sleeps on a mattress, and the only thing in the room really is a black phone on the wall. Soon that phone starts to ring, and Finney gets the advice of the dead boys that preceded him in that room for how to defeat the grabber and escape. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. I don't know that I want to. We'll get into some of this with scenes as far as Gwen and the father and stuff and the scenario. Mm-hmm. But had you ever seen this movie? I don't think you had.
Nope.
Okay.
I had never seen of it. I had heard about it because I kept getting confused when we did, what was it, Mr. Harrington's phone?
Mr. Harrigan's phone, which is Stephen King. That's funny.
Right. And I kept getting confused with that title and this title. And I had seen the poster before because I thought the mask was really cool. It was a neat design. It was very different. And I like the fact that it's two pieces. But
I think it's funny that we did Mr. Harrigan's phone earlier this season. I didn't really intend that to happen, but it did.
Two phones in 1 year.
Well, and two Kings in 1 year, because this is Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, wrote this one. Whereas,
yes, I was going to mention that because it was a short story, right? It wasn't like a novel or something.
Nope,
He just
20 pages.
Okay. Well, great adaptation, I think. I have to say this movie fell into a weird category for me of those movies that I watch it and almost don't like it. I leave it going, I don't know, I'm perplexed, blah, blah. But the longer I've been away from it, the more I like it, and the more scenes come to mind, and the more I appreciate it, and the more I'm thinking, that was really clever the way he did. That was really good, or I really like that, or that was really scary. All these, so I'm living with it. I'm savoring it more.
Yeah.
Because right after it was over, I was going, yeah, it was okay, but it wasn't great. But the longer it's been since I've seen it, which has been a few days now, the more I appreciate it, and the more I think, no, it is pretty good. It really is really good. I thought it was interesting because doing the research for it, Scott Derrickson, I only knew from Doctor Strange. And this is not frickin' Doctor Strange at all.
No.
It is so the other side of Marvel.
Yeah, he also did The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I can't remember if I have seen or not. But he did another one called Sinister that I talked about a few episodes back in a genre week, which also stars Ethan Hawke. It's the one where he moves his family into the victim's house and finds this box of home movies. It's a really, really creepy movie. But of the horror movies that Derrickson has done, this is my favorite. I think Black Phone is pretty awesome.
It is. It's his storytelling. It's his style. The story itself, if you just looked at plot of what happened, like what you summarized just a few minutes ago, you would go, okay, small town, grabber, gets a bunch of kids. We follow one kid as he tries to not die from this guy. But the interpersonal story and the supernatural elements he throws in, and the way he changes genres. I loved the fact that the dreams were like a home movie. The dreams looked like they were shot in like Super 8 or 8 millimeter. Just the film stock he chose and the processing he chose. I thought that was really cool and a neat idea, especially to keep the time period. of the late
Right.
70s. So,
Right, because, well, and that's another unique thing about this. Well, it's not unique, it's actually normal, but we're so used to Ty West, who would have made this movie look like it was filmed in 1978. That's not the case with this. It's set in 1978, but it's filmed like a modern movie.
correct. The style is very modern, but
Right.
the period is still there. So that's like one of my keys that I've got is it's very Stranger Things relation to the way they have shot the time period. Whereas opposed to Ty West makes you feel like you were sitting in somebody's production office in 1984 and you're making a movie.
Right.
This is like we're setting it as a period piece in the 70s, but
The way
we're
way
not.
period pieces are normally filmed and not
Right.
embodying the actual technique of filmmaking. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Direction, screenplay, finding the cast. He did a good job.
all right, first of all, the cast is great, but one of the things I think that makes this story strong is what you said, and it's the underlying story of Finney trying to overcome his inability to fight for himself. And
Right.
I love the twist, and this is the supernatural element. The fact that he is getting these phone calls. He may not be, maybe he's imagining it. I think that it's actually happening. I think it's very supernatural, very Stephen King or Joe Hill, that he is getting calls from dead kids saying, this is what you need to do to get out
this
of
is
there.
Oh, it is so Stephen King to me. And yeah, even though there was no explanation for the phone, or I kept thinking that by the end of it, we would find out why the grabber even left the phone there.
Yeah.
But we never did. But it didn't bother me. It did when it was first over and the credits were rolling. I was going, well, why the hell was the phone there? I don't understand. But in retrospect, thinking about it now with some time distance, it's like it doesn't really matter because it sets it up so well and sets up the supernatural element so well. And the fact that everything these kids are telling him is real. They say, do this, find this wire. I left it over here
It's
on the
hidden in
wall.
a crack in the wall.
And-
Yeah.
And he finds it. Or knock down the wall and you'll find the refrigerator. Yes, okay. All of that is real. So it
Right.
obviously happened.
It had to. Right. He didn't imagine it. Scenes?
Sometimes when we're doing the podcast like this, I'll take a note on the scene. Like I'll say, oh, that was a great scene. I'll put it in my scene list. But other times I watch the entire thing and then see what imprinted and what I remember. And the first one that came to mind for me was the abuse scene, the scene where he is beating his child.
Yeah.
And she is so good in it. And he is too, to be that maniacal as a person and make it realistic. It doesn't seem like, oh, I'm a serial killer dad, if that makes sense. He's a monster from an adult perspective, a parent perspective. But
He's
not
an abusive alcoholic. He's not a killer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. And he plays that so well, that frustration and that grief and that anger and everything, but just the way she plays it, but the whole time she still cares about him. He's still her dad. And that whole relationship when you have an angry parent or a parent that is over the top and gone. That's the first scene that came to mind for me, the first big scene.
Sorry, I had a key I was on the verge of writing a key down and it just left me. All right, as far as another scene, I love the scene where Finney gets abducted. Because you think it's going to play out longer and it doesn't, man. He snatches him fast and those black balloons envelop him and he's like spraying something in his throat to knock him out and boom, he's gone. And the next thing you do, you see him carrying him to the basement room. It happens that fast.
And I silenced the lambs all over that because he drops the stuff and Finney goes to him to say, do you need some help? And then there's just that little almost quiver to his voice when he goes, are those black balloons? And then boom, he's taken. It was really good. That's a good scene. You're right.
Yeah.
I remember It's not the first, I don't think, supernatural scene, but the scene where they do the jump cut and the kid is floating in the corner. His body is floating and beat up.
Oh, it's like
and
bent
everything
backwards.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one I remember just because that jump scare really got me. It was the way it cut and went boom. That was really good.
Yeah. There is a scene, of course, folks, if you haven't seen this, we're going to spoil things. So that's what we do.
We already have.
It is, 3 years old. It's an older movie.
Yeah.
It's been out for a few years. We learn that the grabber, do we ever know the grabber's name? Does he have a name? No. Okay.
I don't think so. His brother has a name because
his brother's name is Max.
Yeah, because the cops go to talk to him.
Right. And that's where I was going, is there's a scene where you discover that after the cops talk to him, it pans down and you realize that Finney is in the basement of that house. And you're like, wait a minute, this is the grabber's brother. So later on, there's a scene where Finney thinks that the grabber is coming to get him. And the door slowly opens and it's Max. And you're like, oh my God, he's going to escape. He's going to escape. There's so many moments where you think he's going to escape.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you see the grabber behind Max with an axe and literally puts the axe in his brother's head.
Oh, yeah. And then has that line later on saying, you made me kill my brother.
You made me kill my brother.
Yeah. And it says a lot about Trachtenberg and the script and everything in general. Not Trachtenberg.
Not Trachtenberg. Derrickson. Yeah.
And the script in general that we have had so many almost escapes by Finney that at the end, when he's doing that real long walk through the house and up to the door and opening the lock, we are sure that the grabber is going to come or grab him or be behind him or do something, and it doesn't happen. And I thought that was excellent.
It is excellent. But you hear his neck break. You hear it crack. So there's no way he could come after him.
Oh, you don't know, Tim, the ghost came back.
Well, if it was a Friday the 13th movie, he would have been on him for sure.
Oh, well, and that's the thing. He bucked that convention because I was so sure that, he's going to jump out. Even when he was on the front lawn and his sister saw him, I thought, and now the grabber's going to jump out right behind him and grab him. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it didn't. And I thought, okay, kudos. Good job.
Well, and speaking of which, the scene prior to that where he actually gets the combination from one of the kids on the phone there's a combo lock that was one of the prior murdered kids' bicycle lock on the grabber's door. And there is a scene where the grabber is asleep in the kitchen, shirtless, in his mask, and the kid is up there trying to put the combo into that lock. That is one of the most suspenseful scenes I've seen in a long time.
Well, and my big key for that, jumping ahead, but my big key for that is Flanagan, because I told you a few weeks ago I just watched Ouija 2 and whatever, but that we see Finn in the foreground, and in the background, out of focus, is the grabber sitting there asleep. And you just know it's going to be Halloween. He's going to turn his head or stand up or do something. You're just going, oh my God, just open the lock, get out. It was great. Great.
And instead, it's a dog barking.
Yes, it's a dog. As soon as he goes, click, the dog barks. And you go, oh my God.
And you don't realize there's a dog. And then the dog also comes in later. It's a big old pit bull at the end.
Well, and you heard the dog when the cops first came, and we meet Max.
Oh, that's true.
And but you didn't see the dog and didn't know what it was. And while you were on Max, I could probably save it for Cass, but when you were on Max, it just occurred to me, I kept looking at him going, where have I seen him before? Where have I seen him before? Where have I seen him before? And it finally, when I did the research and looked it up, he was Eddie in It. And I didn't.
Well, he's also in, you don't know this, but he's also in Sinister, the other movie I was talking about.
Okay.
They like him a lot. Speaking of more Silence of the Lamb type keys, another scene that blew me away is when you realize that there are two houses and that they're
Yeah.
in the house where the bodies are buried, and the cops are in the house where the bodies are buried when he is actually being held across the street. Love that whole scene where he comes out and the sister sees him before anybody else sees him. And she realizes what's going on, and then finally the cops obviously realize what's going on as well.
Yeah. And like
Really
you said,
good stuff.
the scene right before that, his final, when we get the summation of Finney's character and he does stand up for himself and just beats him and then strangles him and then has the wherewithal to take the steak to the dog, all that was great. You were just going, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, as soon as I saw those frozen steaks in the freezer, that when he went, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. He gives the dog blood later." It's like I was remembering it because I had saw this movie probably the year it came out. It had been a few years since I'd seen it. Yeah, this was my second time. So, any other scenes, or shall we move on to cast?
We can move on to cast because I was going to say it's a good cast segue, but any scene with the grabber. He is just so menacing in the way he does his voice. Because it's not Pennywise, but it's not Hannibal, but just very, very good choices by Ethan Hawke. Really.
Yeah. And it's even more exaggerated when he's abducting him and acting all silly. And you're like, who is this guy? He's really creepy. And then later, you're hearing it, but you're not seeing it because he's got like the mask on. Like here's a shot of him with the mask on. So you've got, I just, kudos to Ethan Hawke. He is becoming one of my favorite actors because I've watched him in The Purge. I watched him in Sinister. I've seen him in this, and I'm like, this guy's really, really good. He has matured and become a great actor.
He's great with his pacing. He's great. And I like the way Derrickson did lighting with him and lighting on the mask because a lot of it is either very over or very under. So you get a lot of shadow and stuff. But then Hawke plays to it. Like he'll tilt his head up as he's talking and you just go, oh my gosh, it's just creepy and good and cool. It's just great choices. Just really good acting choices.
Yeah, for sure. Before I do cast, I do have a little bit of background. Scott Derrickson made this his next project after leaving Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness over creative differences. However, he remained on as an executive producer of that film with Sam Raimi directing. I think it's got something to do with them making Wanda a bad guy.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I do think it would have been very interesting to see if Derrickson had directed that film.
Yeah.
As good as and as scary and creepy as this one was, I think it would have been interesting to see him do that without the Sam Raimiism, so to speak, in that particular film. So,
It was written in 6 weeks and shot in 33 days.
dang.
That's
okay.
very quick, but it's a small cast. And it was delayed from its January 22 release to June of 2022 because it had unexpectedly great preview showings. Once Blumhouse realized just how great these reactions were, they gave it a summer release.
Sweet.
Okay, now I'll move on to cast. Mason, first of all, the two stars really of this, well, actually, I guess Ethan Hawke would be one of the stars, but the two kid stars in this movie, Mason Thames plays Finney and Madeline McGraw plays Gwen. I don't have a lot that they have done, but they are both well-known and respected kid actors that work and have clout. Mason was in your show, For All Mankind. I don't know what he played in that. And then Madeline McGraw was in American Sniper, which was an Oscar movie, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was Oscar nominated.
Yep.
So those, I just put those down as pinpoints because I wasn't going to list other stuff that I didn't know because they were in tons of stuff I've never heard of. I thought they're both just super, super strong.
This bond that they obviously develop, but their chemistry together as brother and sister is so cool. Some of my favorite sequences with them were ones where they didn't even have dialogue. The morning of, when he's eating and his dad is all obviously hungover and pissed off, and just the eye contact that they share when the toaster pops or when the bread drawer falls or whatever. And that little voice she gives, that sorry, daddy, and then looks at him like, Jesus. Just their relationship non-verbally was excellent.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have mentioned yet, for you folks out there listening, Gwen is psychic too. And the cops are consulting her because she has these dreams that lead to clues in the abductions of these other kids. So when it becomes Finney, her brother, that's abducted, she has gone into like super psychic mode because she's trying to save her brother before he gets killed. So she's doing everything. She's like making promises to Jesus and trying to force herself to have dreams so that she can figure out where he is. And she does. She finds the house number, 47144 or something like that. She sees it in a dream. Anyway, the next would be the grabber himself, Ethan Hawke. I've already mentioned several movies he's done. We covered him first, I think, in Explorers a few seasons back when he was a child actor. But he was also in movies like Reality Bites, Training Day, Gattaca. His breakthrough role was with Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society. I did not realize that. I had forgotten he was in that. Love that movie.
That's a great movie.
Yeah. I found an interesting bit of trivia. He is a first cousin twice removed of Tennessee Williams.
Oh, I did not know that. That's
I
really
did
cool.
not know that either. It said that Hawke's great-grandfather and Williams' father were brothers.
Okay.
Yeah, fascinating.
Did not know that.
So there's a little theater there. This is what Scott Derrickson has to say about Ethan Hawke. He's my favorite actor I've worked with. He recalls trying to convince Hawke to do Sinister in 2012, despite the actor's protestations that he did not like or watch horror movies. Hawke had been concerned it would be a dark experience, and Derrickson convinced him that it's actually a lot of fun making horror movies. He had to be convinced. He had to be convinced once again for this film, but it was because he doesn't really play villains and told Derrickson the script would have to be great for him to sign on. Hawke called back that night after reading it and left a voicemail in the voice of the grabber. And Derrickson knew he had him hooked.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah.
I thought that was great. And excellent choice. Terrence, the abusive alcoholic father, is played by Jeremy Davies. Did you recognize him?
I did not.
Okay, see, he's a very familiar face to me because he was in Saving Private Ryan, and I like that movie a lot. He was also in Twister, for those of you out there that watch action movies like that. In television, you're going to remember this too, Davies was invited to join the cast of J.J. Abrams' Lost, and soon his character, Daniel Faraday, quickly became an integral part of the Lost mythology. So that's another favorite thing he's done. I remember him most from Private Ryan, though. But apparently he was so popular on Lost, they sold his bobbleheads. Daniel Faraday bobbleheads. So,
Sure.
I don't know. Anyway,
Sure.
I think he's great in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I read he had some difficulty doing it, too.
Yeah, his scenes
like the
are...
scene where he's beating his daughter with a belt.
Well, all of his scenes are intense. Even the scene when he's finally confessing to her how much grief he has, and he doesn't want what happened to her mom to happen to Gwen. That's an intense emotional scene. Even though it's not violent, it is very intense. And his final scene is intense. And I love the fact that Derrickson doesn't make a commitment at the end of that scene. He is literally kneeling down in front of his kids, sobbing on their knees, saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And all they do is just hug each other tighter. And that's it. They don't say, oh, it's okay, Daddy. They don't say, if you stop drinking, we'll be a happy family. None of that. It's just, there's no resolution to it, and we don't really care. It makes it cool.
And he's so convincing at playing the violent father that after Finney is abducted, I still am nervous with him around his daughter. I
Oh,
keep
yes.
waiting for him to do it again, but he doesn't do
Yes.
anything after his son's been kidnapped.
Yeah, it's like the double loss he really can't take. And that's the
Hmm.
thing that's really cool about this screenplay. And I don't know if it's in the short story. I never read it, so I don't know. But all of this subtext underneath it of the grief that he's having to handle, and then having the grief of his son being gone, and how long this killer has been doing this. At least 5 kids are missing, and one of them enough to have dug through the wall and then have him repair the wall before he
Yeah.
brings another one in. That time frame, because we're not really given a time frame in it. It doesn't say like 4 months later or, oh, this is like that kid that we lost last year or whatever. We don't get those references in it. So,
No, but the opening credits are really creepy and like that movie. It reminds me of the movie Seven. That's actually a good key.
yeah, very
Where they
good.
keep showing all these like missing posters stapled to telephone
Which,
poles in like
which
real
is a lot like
erratic.
it too.
Yes, but the photography is real staccato, like sepia
Yes,
tone. It just reminded me of
home
Seven for
movie.
some. Yeah,
It's like home
yeah,
movie cuts. Yeah. And
right.
the fact that they keep showing all the happy stuff you do as kids, like play baseball and all this, and then they show the bad stuff like scrape knees and
Juxtaposed. Yeah.
yeah, close-ups of a Band-Aid box and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like kids in the 70s, we got bruised and hurt. That's the other thing too. I didn't mention it in scenes, but the bullying in this movie is extreme. The
It,
violence is
I
pretty
mean,
extreme.
a key would be my life because that reminded me so much of when I was in school. I mean, I was that age in 1978. All the kids had long hair, or the bullies were like really tough like that. And you
Yeah.
would see school fights that were that bloody. It wasn't like Grease. You know, it wasn't like a musical of
Right.
street gangs. This was real, and it
And
just, oof.
And again, plotting the way we are introduced to Gwen more so than even Finney, because we saw Finney because he's the pitcher for the baseball team. So we saw that whole opening scene, and she supported him and everything, but we already established him. But her big support is going to school that morning, and they hear fight, fight, fight being chanted, and they go running over to it, and she is really into it, going, yeah,
Yeah,
get going. And Finney has to pull her away.
right.
So I thought that was really clever storytelling too.
And that's the one where it's his friend that's actually beating up
Yep.
somebody that ends up helping him later when three guys attack him or corner him in the bathroom.
Yeah, he looked
Yeah.
Native American almost to me, that character, and loved his dialogue in the bathroom scene. Where he's going, "Yeah, I didn't mean to hit him that often, but I just couldn't stop." You know?
Yeah. That's funny that you said that because I think his sister looks Native American, especially in that scene with the pigtails and the headband.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
she does. Yeah,
She, a few other cast members, Roger Mitchell and Troy Rudisill played the detectives. They're just familiar face character actors.
yep.
But the one that you mentioned that is of note is James Ranson, who played Eddie Kasparak in Two, the adult version of Eddie Kasparak. He is also in Sinister. He has a very memorable role in Sinister as
Oh,
a
okay.
cop. He's like trying to help Ethan Hawke in that movie to solve these murders. Derrickson and Cargill realized partway through the script they needed to give the audience a break of some sort. So they specifically wrote this role for Cargill, for Ransom.
Ransom. So
Yeah.
he is not in the short story we
I
got to see.
can't remember. I have read it and I just don't remember. I do remember that instead of a magician, it is a clown. And they changed that specifically because of the It connections.
Oh yeah, they'd have to.
Yeah, because, well, first of all, it's Stephen King's son. Second of all, it's another clown, and it just came out in 2017, just a few years
Yeah.
prior, so they wouldn't want to get any confusion. So they just went and made the whole grabber a magician instead of a clown.
Okay.
Awards: the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror nominated this for supporting actor, Hawke; younger actress, McGraw; younger actor, Thames; writing, Derrickson; and best horror film. It only won best horror film, but it won a Bram Stoker Award for best screenplay, and I agree with that. I think it's a solid screenplay.
Yeah, I think it's a solid screenplay. I think it deserves directing recognition because it's really well directed.
Well, the Chainsaw Awards gave it 4 wins for wide release, supporting performance, McGraw, screenplay, and editor's eyeball award, which was Thames, the kid playing Finney. So really,
Okay.
the director didn't win anything, which is a shame. This is not on the 1001 list, but it is only updated through 2020. So who knows if it would be on there or not. I don't know if they're ever going to update that list.
Right.
And that's what I have for cast and awards.
I had just a couple of trivia things, and again, I found these through research, but the one I want to get before you do probably is the mask design. And because it was designed by Tom Savini. And I thought that was so cool. That is really cool.
I wonder how they got him. Did you think he went, oh, let's call Tom Savini? Because Tom doesn't do a lot these days. And
No.
I don't know.
But think of that
Are you there?
again, think of that
sorry.
think of that skill and think of that request or to be able to do that because this season 2 we did the Donnie Darko with that weird mask thing and Jason and Freddy, although it's his skin, it's mask-esque, but you get a new screenplay and you have to design the serial killer's horror mask. What's it going to look like?
William Shatner. No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I thought it was great that they got him. I see similarities to other things that I have keys for, but it's definitely a Savini creation. But it's more than one. There's like different versions of it. It comes in pieces. Like that one looks like the Joker from Batman.
Because it's the upper and the lower. He's got the bottom one, which is just the smile and everything else, and then he has the top one that
with the
fits
horns.
on with the horns, but you can see his mouth.
Yeah.
And everything.
What did you think about it when he yanked his mask off and he freaked out?
I liked that, but what I liked most about it was the fact that he covered his face and we still couldn't see his face.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I don't think you ever see Ethan Hawke's full face in this entire movie.
Well, but I also think it helped Finney escape and kill him because it bought him time when he knocked the mask off because Ethan Hawke reacts like, oh my God, I'm vulnerable or whatever.
Yep.
And then he has time to clock him with the phone a few more times or whatever it is. That's great. He does jump that hole. Ethan Hawke falls in the hole so that he can start hitting him, but then he eventually leaps over and uses the cord to strangle him, which I just love the whole the death scene. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's very good. And all the scenes with the kids are good. They're terrifying, they're suspenseful, they're sad to an extent. It's really interesting. And the way he shoots them they appear in the same room with Finney. That's a very cool visual language, I thought.
Like when they're on the phone with him, sometimes they're actually there sitting next to him. Yeah.
Right.
Or
standing in
next to
the
him.
corner or like when he's learning to hit with the phone. They're both doing it together in sequence, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very, very good.
I've got a little bit of trivia. There's a scene in this movie from The Tingler, which we covered last season, I believe.
Yes.
He said that he put it in there because this movie truly freaked him out as a kid. He said, I think that was what started my whole horror movie obsession. So
Oh, there you go.
That's awesome. Scott Derrickson's favorite current touring band is called the Brian Jonestown Massacre.
Okay.
Brian Jones was one of the founding members of the Rolling Stones. He died, and of course, Jim Jones was the Jonestown Massacre. This band's called the Brian Jonestown Massacre, and they recorded the song you hear at the credits at the end that sounds like an old song, but it's not. Because he specifically asked them to do a song with a 70s vibe. So I thought it was cool. Another thing that I found on IMDb that just cracked me up is that the van that the grabber drives has the word abracadabra on it. And around 1982, there was a song by Steve Miller Band called Abracadabra. I'm going to reach out and grab ya.
Everybody played that song.
I'm going to reach out and grab ya.
Yep. Hugely popular song.
Well, I know, but it's just ironic that the grabber is the serial killer in this movie.
Yep.
And then every method of escape that the kids on the phone tell Finney to use to fight off the grabber at the end is utilized. The hole, the cable, the freezer, the meat, the packing the phone with the dirt, and the padlock combination. All of those things are utilized in the last scene with him getting out.
And they all appear to Gwen. All of the murdered boys appear.
Yeah, they scare her. She like falls off her bike. Whatever, because they all appear in the road right in front of her. Yeah, scary shit.
To stop her where the house is.
Yeah. Okay, really I guess we can move on to keys. I think that's all my trivia.
The first key I wrote down, just in retrospect, was Ty West. Just because, again, this is a very accomplished period piece, and that seems to be his bailiwick he's very good at. Like you said, I think this one is told with modern convention of a period piece rather than I'm actually making this movie in 78 sort of thing. But definitely I think he was an influence on the visual style.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. If not, it's reminiscent for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first key I have is obviously the short story. I already mentioned that they changed it from a clown to a magician. And I almost reread it before we recorded, but I just didn't have time. It's 20 pages. It would have taken me probably an hour, but I just didn't get around to it. So it was in his first book of short stories, though.
Well, and it seems like it's his homage to Daddy, to a child killer, which was one of King's biggest books and was a huge phenomenon now. But it seems like it was Joe going, I can write kid killer books too, Dad. Kind of thing.
Well, I was going to say, even if it wasn't, there are enough elements of the movie It in this that it would be a key.
Oh, God.
The movie It. Because even when she's riding the bike and she's got that yellow rain slicker on and it's raining. And plus Eddie Kasparak is in the movie. The man that played Eddie grown up.
And that was a choice, too. He did not have to have her in a yellow rain slicker, but he did. And I think that's a definite key to It.
I totally agree.
I've got Mike Flanagan in general just because of the ghosts, so to speak, or the boys, and the way he shoots them. Like one is he's on the phone, and as he turns this way, the camera pans over, and the guy is standing right there behind him. And it's a jump scare. Another time he's sitting there, and he's sitting on the bed beside him. Kind of
so
thing.
It's more Haunting of Hill House than Flanagan.
Yeah, okay, well said. Yeah, could be that. Mm-hmm.
Because I had down The Shining for the exact same reason.
Mm-hmm.
The little girls murdered in the hall, come play with us, Danny. It's the same thing. Like that kid that you see in that picture behind me telling him, hey, I don't know if I'm the paper boy or not. That's your job.
I don't remember. Yeah.
All those conversations are so creepy.
Yeah.
Because they're like somewhere where they don't remember who they were.
Yeah. Having a static underneath them is really cool, too. But while you're there, Rose the Hat, because he wears the stovepipe hat, she has her funky hat. That
she has like a top hat, too, yeah.
And again, that's almost a pseudo-Shining reference.
That would be Dr. Sleep.
Yep.
Yeah. I mentioned 7 because of the credits at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
However, you mentioned Savini, and I just want to say Creep Show because that mask looks
Yeah.
like Fluffy, the
It looks like
monster in the
Fluffy.
crate.
So true. So true.
Just
And I'm
lots of
wondering,
teeth.
as soon as I found out that it was Savini who did it, I saw it immediately and went, "Oh my gosh, that is that." I wonder if he did that on purpose, kind of thing. But
I mean,
I
they're
also
just
have
the only difference is the teeth aren't sharp; they're just
right.
big. But
But I
in
also
the
have a key
Creep
to
Show, they're
that
sharp.
because of Dr. Sardonicus. It reminds me of that too.
Mr.
Because it's
Sardonicus.
so Mr.
Yeah.
Sardonicus, because it's so splayed out and open and everything, almost ape-like.
Or the Joker. He looks like the Joker,
Joker.
from Batman,
Joker's-
the Tim Burton version with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, and it's that confluence of images or icons for us because it's horned, which makes us think demon, evil, bad, awful. The eyes have nothing over them, so they're very humanistic looking. And then that smile is like so huge and inflated. It's like, ugh. No, I don't like scary and nice at the same time. But that's exactly the way Hawk plays it too.
Yeah. I have Silence of the Lambs for several reasons, but mainly that flip at the end where you realize the cops are in the wrong house. That's a major Silence of the Lambs thing.
Totally.
Yeah. But also keeping your victims in a basement is much like Silence of the Lambs as well.
Well, in Dating Me, it's not really a key, but it's like an Easter egg in this is you mentioned the Tingler, that he was watching the Tingler, Finney was at one point. Before that, when they're both being nice at home so we don't piss off Daddy, they're watching Davy and Goliath, which really dates me because I used to watch Davy and Goliath. So I remember that.
Yeah.
Which was like early Christian claymation almost.
It was like Gumby.
Yeah.
It looked like Gumby. It was late 60s, wasn't it? Early 70s, late 60s. I remember watching them too.
Yeah.
I have The Devil's Candy. And the reason I have The Devil's Candy is that this film has a non-typical family in it, which I like seeing, even though it's not a pleasant sight. It's an abused family. You don't usually see a family like that. Just like in The Devil's Candy, you didn't see a punk rock type family or whatever. They're not punk rock. They're artists.
Curious.
And they listen to
Yeah.
heavy metal.
Yeah.
So I just thought it just reminded me of not seeing a cookie cutter family. You know, it's not E.T. or something like that, where it's just a happy family.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what modern audiences have thought about. I didn't read a lot of reviews of this movie because it's more suspense than it is gore and horror. The violence at the beginning is graphic as far as I'm really just sitting on this kid and beating his face into the ground. But the terror in this comes from the situations and the suspense, not from gore or jump scares or horrible violence or whatever, or some weird Seven or Saw contraption or something. It's all
The only gore in it really is the makeup effects on the previous victims as ghosts.
right. And the hatchet kill. Those are the
Oh,
only two
yeah,
that
that's
I
right.
think
You
are-
do see a hatchet get somebody from behind. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the only two that I think are like gory. So it's mostly Hitchcockian. It's that suspense. You're rooting for Finney to get out, but you don't know if he ever will, and you're afraid he won't. And it's just
Why did
it's
you?
very
I'm curious. Why did you say something about modern audiences?
because so many modern movies are either torture porn or they
Okay.
have to have gore or they have to go fast pace. And this one has a steady pace, but it's not fast, I don't think.
I was.
But
I
it's not
thought.
slow like some of the other ones we've watched this year either.
Okay.
Some of them
I
are
thought
slower.
maybe you had brought it up because of the parental abuse and whether or
No.
not that is not as prevalent these days, or at least you don't hear about it as much these days. When I was
I
a
don't-
kid, my parents used a belt on me too. They didn't do it like that, but they would definitely whip me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we were raised at a time of corporal, as they called it, punishment. Even in school, I got spankings in school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it was not unheard of, especially by parents. It's just that hopefully most of us were lucky enough not to have an alcoholic father who was having some grief management issues.
Right, right. Okay. Back to keys. Now, I've got the ones we mentioned about Ty West, Rose the Hat, Mr. Sardonicus. I've got two that Scott Derrickson used that I thought were pretty impressive. One I've never heard of.
Yeah.
It's called The 400 Blows. It's a foreign film.
It's a French film. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 1959. It's about like a troubled kid that ends up going to, I don't know, detention or something. Anyway, but also The Devil's Backbone.
Guillermo del Toro.
And you can see the influence in scenes like this. It was a ghost that was trying to warn these kids of what was going to happen to them and why he died. And that's exactly what this film is.
So true. And maybe even down to color palette, too. There's such a washed out, grainy, gray feel when we're in the basement. And that's very similar to Del Toro, although he had more gold just because
it was more gold, and it was in that room with the water. It had that, I don't know, that reservoir or whatever, where the kid was like at the bottom of it, chained to a rock or whatever. Yeah.
I don't know if I was looking for it in post and thinking about it, but the fact that when they set up the door that the grabber uses, this door at the bottom of the basement stairs, and you can hear the lock engage every time he closes it and does it.
Not every time.
It was, yeah, right. Sometimes he does. But it was very Texas Chainsaw to me. They had already mentioned Chainsaw in the bathroom scene because
that's right.
He said he dated it and everything else. But I remember that was so scary to me in Chainsaw was what's going to happen with that freaking door. And they kept and sliding it closed and stuff.
Yeah. I read something on IMDb where they said that, sorry, it looks like my volume's going too loud, where they said Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out in 74 and this is set in 78. But they said if you were alive back then, movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre were still playing at drive-ins 4 years later.
Easily. Yeah, easily.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Any other keys?
That's all I have. You could probably go back and do some influences of this on past serial killers. I'm sure that Ethan or Derrickson or whatever was thinking Hannibal or thinking the killer in Saw, not in Saw, but in Seven. Those, how do you portray a serial killer without it being cliche or over the top or whatever? And to find a unique blend of it was really cool.
I've got a few I lifted from IMDb. The black balloons is also reminiscent of what the daughter paints on her walls in Sinister, the previous Derrickson horror movie. Black balloons play pretty heavily in that one as well. You mentioned Rose the Hat and Dr. Sleep, but there's also the fact that they abduct a child walking home from a baseball game. Yep. In that movie. And it happens in this movie too, because the baseball player that he's pitching against in the very beginning gets abducted. Bruce, I think is his name.
Much more harrowing in Rose with Dr.
Oh, it's
Sleep.
Awful.
It's so awful.
Dr. Sleep wears me out. The Grabber, according to Derrickson, is based on real-life serial killers Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and Jeffrey Dahmer. Perfect. Bundy would use a ruse to lure victims to help him into his car. Gacy would use a belt on his victims, who were all young boys, and Dahmer had one victim escape his apartment only to be recaptured.
Yep.
And all of those things happen in this movie.
And that's definite influences there.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I have is what we've already talked about, the ties to It chapter, or no, It 2017. And It, actually both It films, really, 2017 and 2019. I think that's all I have.
Well, that's all I have, except I did see, I did see a little snippet that said that he's doing a sequel. And I was going,
Yeah.
what?
I
I
was
don't know
going to
if that'll be
mention
good,
that.
but
And how are you going to do it? And is Ethan Hawke going to be in it? Because if he's not, it's not going to be worth it. And he died.
yeah, and if he is, how is it then? Does he start calling Finney? That might be cool. If he's not the actual menace in it, if he's either calling someone else to get them to do it, or if, I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. I just hope they don't try to franchise it because I hate that crap.
Yeah, I don't like it either. And when I saw it, I was like, I didn't remember if he died or not. And I distinctly heard his neck crack in this movie. His neck broke. Yeah.
But
So,
we bring people back to life all the time in movies, so it could happen.
well,
And
we
it's
do.
the supernatural elements.
but it needs to be in order to do justice to it, they need to make it logical.
Totally
It needs
agree.
to be like you said. Maybe he's haunted. Maybe they'll do a Doctor Sleep, and Finney's grown up and haunted by the grabber or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Wait
the
and
Black
see.
Phone 2 sounds like a dumb title.
Yeah. Black Phone 2.
Black Phone 2. Black Phone.
Well,
Black
that's
Phone.
what Tim and I think about the Black Phone, Scott Derrickson's little trip down to serial killer land. And we would love to know what you guys think about it. We both obviously like it and think it's worth a watch and heavily influential. And we would love to know what you guys think. Leave a comment down below. Leave us your thoughts and what you think and what you liked, what you didn't like. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Who knows? Let us know. We'd also love your support in any way you can, whether you subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast and or the YouTube channel or both. And we also have a Patreon where we have other episodes, other actual series of stuff. Two different shows that we have. One is X-Files Declassified, where we look at X-Files episode by episode. And another one is Star Trek, the original series that we look at episode by episode called The Dilithium Chamber. And it's the original series, so it's good Star Trek. It's not the new stuff that everybody knows I hate. But until next time, Tim, when hopefully we'll be back in the world of fantasy and science fiction and fun stuff and not crazy killer pseudo magicians.
It may actually be a superhero film.
Oh, wow. Well, that might even be cool too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look forward to seeing you then.
All right. I'll see you then.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has